Welcome everyone to the House Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs. It is Wednesday already. Wednesday, March 27th, 2024 at 2 p.m. here in conference room 325, and we're running this hearing by video conference also. If you're going to testify, I would request that you limit your testimony to 2 minutes, and then I'll ask you to wrap up. If you're testifying via Zoom, please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify, and then after your testimony is complete. If you have technical issues, you can use the Zoom chat function to chat with our top-notch technical staff. They'll help you out. If you're disconnected, don't worry, just rejoin. I'll try to fit you in and provide your testimony after you return. In the event of power outage here or network failure here in the Capitol, and if we need to reschedule, I'll make sure we post appropriate notice. If you're testifying via Zoom, please do not use any trademarked or copyrighted images, and please everyone, anyone who's testifying, please conduct yourself with aloha and refrain from profanity or any uncivil behavior. It's okay to disagree, but let's not be disagreeable. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Senate Bill 2066, SD2 HD1, relating to housing. This measure establishes another means for a housing project to seek an exemption from laws and rules of the state that are developed under various programs of the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation. First up, we have the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation. Thanks for being here.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, members. Neiman Akami, Executive Director of the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation. We stand on our testimony offering comments. Thank you.
If I could ask you, just explain, because you offer more than just comments. You have suggested amendments, and if you could just tell us the highlights of why you think these amendments are important to include.
We've been working with the introducer of this bill to clarify what the intent of the bill is, and the latest of the amendments that we offer clarify that the purpose is to create a separate pathway for 201H expedited permitting projects whereby there will not be affordability requirements for a project, and buyers will not have to meet income requirements, but all units must be basically owner occupied. So they will all be occupied by owners of the units, or if it's a rental project, the renters will have to be Hawaii residents.
Great, thank you. I appreciate your work on this. Okay, next we have testimony from other organizations, NIAP Hawaii with comments, Maui Chamber of Commerce with comments, testimony from 3 individuals, 2 in support and 1 in opposition. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify in Senate Bill 2066?
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee. Angela Melody Young testifying on behalf of CARES. And in favor. So the purpose of this act is to create another pathway for housing projects to seek 201H exemptions. The HHFDC's primary mission is to increase and preserve the supply of affordable housing across the state. Chapter 201H allows HHFDC to assist developers in processing requests to expedite review for exemptions relating to planning, zoning, and construction standards. HHFDC does not initiate 201H requests. The developer approaches HHFDC, and during the 201H process, project applications are routed to various public agencies for review and comment, including Honolulu Fire Department, Honolulu Police Department, Board of Water Supply, and the Department of Environmental Services. Once DPP determines a project is eligible for review of 201H exemptions, it goes through a series of hearings at the City Council for further approval and confirmation. Senate Bill 2066 proposes another pathway to expedite the projects by requiring certain projects meeting the criteria of 201H to be exclusively for sale or rent to occupants who own no other real property. If they do own more than one property, they are not eligible for this pathway. So creating another pathway for expedited review for exemptions will enhance affordable housing projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? None, thanks very much. We'll move on to the next measure. Thanks to the testifiers. I really appreciate HHFDC's testimony. That helped clear it up because I was a little confused too. So appreciate that. Okay, Senate Bill 3025 HD1 relating to hemp. This measure repeals the requirement for additional rules by the Department of Agriculture to address nuisance issues, including smell, noise, and excessive lighting arising out of the activities of hemp growers. Clarifies that DOA shall not require inspections or sampling of hemp that duplicates inspections or sampling required by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. On this measure, we have testimony and support from Hawaii Department of Agriculture on Zoom. Please proceed.
Hello, good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, and members of the committee. My name is Leo Obaldo, Administrator of the Quality Assurance Division, testifying on behalf of Hawaii Department of Agriculture. We stand on our written testimony in strong support of this bill. Just would like to highlight three things. Pre-existing regulations from Department of Agriculture and county land ordinances already address the issues of excessive light, noise, or odor arising from hemp cultivation. So the adoption of new rules is unnecessary. DOA shall not require inspection or sampling that duplicate inspection or sampling required by USDA. And then the third one is the bill amends section 14142 HRS, which currently prohibits the state from imposing any forms of penalty, which would also prohibit penalties against hemp growers for the illegal use of pesticides. The DOA would like to strengthen the state's ability to enforce such penalties. Will be available for questions if there are any. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Rainbow Family 808 and from one individual. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? You just
Angela
tell us
Melody.
what your thoughts are. You don't have to summarize the bill or tell us what it's about.
Young, on behalf of CARES, wishing to comment. I neither support nor do I oppose the bill. So, hemp and marijuana are related plants, right? So if marijuana requires additional safety measures to manage, shouldn't also hemp? The concern here is, does hemp require additional safety enforcement measures? And DOE testifies essentially to say that it's not necessary, the additional safety enforcement measures, because it could be an additional burden to the office if it's duplicative. So I'm reading DOA's concerns regarding the creation of duplicative enforcement framework from two offices, which may result in incompatible oversight and conflicting actions and decisions. And when this bill was introduced and heard, DOA was fully aware that there is already an office addressing that issue, and it does not require other offices to alert DOA of this. DOA seems to have performed its investigative duties. And it's proposing to repeal and remove redundancies and confusion arising from conflicting rules and push for only one office to address the enforcement issue. So pre-existing regulations and authority under DOH and under the county land use ordinances already address the safety concern. And while I do not regulate, I'm thinking of something else. While I do not advocate for regulatory burdens, which has a domino effect in requiring additional staffing to carry out enforcement, we do have to wonder if hemp requires additional safety measures because of the culture of hemp and marijuana, which causes public safety concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, thank you very much to the testifiers. We'll move on to the next measure. Senate Bill 3154. Relating to regulation of archaeological activities. This measure clarifies that failure to comply with approved mitigation commitments, conduct an archaeological inventory survey, or comply with other administrative requirements pertaining to archaeology approved by the DLNR shall result in civil and administrative violations. First up, we have testimony from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Kamakana Ferreira, the lead compliance specialist with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. We stand on a written testimony in support. And to highlight a bit, basically, if a project gets to go through, they should be held accountable to the mitigation commitments that they made as part of the historic preservation review process. Sometimes this doesn't always happen, so we believe this will give SHPD the necessary tools to enforce when that happens, but ultimately this will serve as a deterrent so people just will do the mitigation commitment instead of not do them. So be available for any questions as well.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from DLNR. Not present. Anyone else wishing to testify in Senate Bill 3154?
Angela Melody Young, testifying wishing to comment. So the archaeological inventory survey, okay? Federal and state regulations require consultation and review for projects impacting historic properties, specifically projects taking place on federal or state lands, or projects requiring permits from federal and state offices. And so with this proposed measure, a violation occurs, according to this new chapter, when an archaeological inventory survey is not performed, or when failure to comply with mitigation plans has occurred, or when a developer alters the approved plan without prior approval, or when a developer carries out development plans on a preservation or burial preserve without prior authorization, and when a developer fails to submit a report as required by Chapter 6E relating to state historic preservation rules, SHIP D. So within the context of violations occurring and the archaeological inventory survey, of all the things that are listed here of concerns, I'm very concerned about the burial sites. For example, if a violation occurs, then it is fair to cite the violation in honor of burial grounds, right? Yet I'm concerned, how do you verify burial sites? For example, if a developer
Could you please summarize?
is building and then wasn't aware of burial grounds, then what is the process there? I'm just concerned. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go back and ask DLNR for testimony. Thank you for being here.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Apologize for my late arrival.
Oh, no worries. Happy to have you here, sir.
So, excuse me, the department stands on its written testimony in support. The need for this measure is simply because we are on a regular basis, I would say 2 or 3 times a week, notified that something's going on. Sometimes it's somebody thinks something is going on and we weren't aware of it, and nothing really is, nothing bad is going on. Sometimes administrative procedures have been violated. Administrative provisions, for example, there's a burial preserve that somebody has worked inside the boundary of the preserve, but it's not obvious that they've necessarily damaged a burial site. Under the current interpretation of our rules, we can only pursue a violation if we can prove that damages to historic property or a burial site have occurred. And that means that even though we know something has gone wrong in terms of a violation of administrative requirements, there's nothing we can do about it unless we can prove damages. So this would give us a tool to make sure that people do, in fact, comply with the terms that they've agreed to as part of the compliance process. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 3154? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, thanks very much to the testifiers. Let's move on to the next measure. Senate Bill 2908 relating to emergency management. This measure prohibits residential rent increases in affected areas for an unspecified period after a severe storm warning or issuance of an emergency proclamation. It shortens the duration of price control periods and prohibition against residential tenancy termination from 96 hours to 72 hours. First up, we have testimony from Hawaii Emergency Management Agency. In support? Next, we have testimony from Hawaii Realtors. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Lindsay Garcia from Hawaii Realtors. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. We stand in strong support of this bill and suggest some friendly amendments. We do appreciate the amendments that were made in the previous committee. We believe this bill that will provide the needed clarity for both consumers as well as businesses to allow the governor and mayor to give guidance within 72 hours as to whether price freezing needs to occur on which goods and services. So we greatly appreciate your hearing this bill today, and I'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Courtney Lazo, Lahaina Strong. Not present? You are present. Happy day.
Aloha, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, and members of the committee. Lahaina Strong stands in support of our testimony. I just wanted to quickly say mahalo for your commitment to our community of Lahaina and listening as well to fire survivor himself, Senator Angus McKelvey. His stories are real, and it is what Lahaina wildfire survivors are facing daily. The fallout from the fire has been overwhelming, with waves of evictions, extreme rent increases, and not just in Lahaina, but island-wide. No one is safe on Maui right now if you are a renter. Everyone is scared of being evicted and scared of skyrocketing rent that no one can afford. We ask that you do everything in your power to protect our Maui community and communities in the future should another tragedy such as this one occur. Mahalo, everyone.
Mahalo. Next, we have testimony from the Hawaii Food Industry Association, Lauren Zerbel. In support and not present. Next, we have testimony from Keasha Nuesca in support. Not present. And we have testimony in support from 78 other individuals, and comments from 2 organizations, or 1 organization and 1 individual. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on Senate Bill 2908? Yes.
Angela Melody Young on behalf of CARES. So the bill relating to emergency management will set forth parameters for an
Ma'am,
emergency
we know-
action.
We know what the bill
plan.
does. If you could tell us what your opinion is, for
Yes.
or against, that'd be great.
I'd like to specifically address towards the bottom of the measure, the issue and concern of crossing out NOAA. So CARES' proposal is to restore the original proposal. Subsection A1 or 2 shall remain in effect until 24 hours after the severe weather warnings is canceled by the NOAA's National Weather Service. I propose to restore the original measure. And so to clarify, there should only be one, right? Only one appropriate weather office to announce severe weather warnings. And this office is from the federal office. So the National Weather Service, a branch of NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, broadcasts weather in 3 to 5 minute cycles of forecasts, warnings, and current conditions of the climate. So, yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? Representative Kong? Yes.
Rare, do I have one? Lindsay, can I get you a moment? I guess you mentioned that proclamations can go on and forever and whatever. Would it might have an effect that it would raise prices initially to prevent that loss from occurring? Does that make sense? Like, the rents might go higher for before the proclamation or even emergency happens. And then when it does happen, you know, they'd be frozen, right? So would it?
In an event of emergency, my understanding would be, hopefully, that these types of emergencies you wouldn't necessarily be able to foresee. When it comes to rent is usually dictated by contract, and the tenant should know, it should be dictated in the contract if the rent is going up within that contracted period. So hopefully that what you're talking about wouldn't necessarily occur. And then this bill will allow the governor or mayor to specify if price freezing, including, you know, rent freezing, needs to occur whenever he or she makes an emergency proclamation.
Yeah, so even prior to an emergency though, would they not hedge their rents, I guess, to increase it in case it hits a freeze?
I think, I'm not clear of your question, Representative, but I appreciate your concern, right, in wanting to address the concerns of the public. As I said, when it comes to rental agreements, those are contracts.
Right.
And so that price is dictated, what the tenant needs to pay is dictated by that contract,
Right.
which is signed ahead of time by both the landlord and the tenant. There could have been in the contract, written in a prescribed rental increase, but that would have been in the contract, and the tenant would be aware of that happening ahead of time. So the landlord should not, within the term of an agreed contract, should not be raising rent, without notice, and without it not being in the contract that the tenant has signed.
Well, I was thinking even before the contract is signed to raise the rent, so that they'd hedge against any loss after. Does that make sense? Before the contract is signed,
Before the contract is signed, well,
raise the rent?
Well, rental prices are dictated by the market and
Right.
supply and demand. And so, so when it comes to your situation, if the landlord wanted to, I guess, before a contract is signed, dictate as they would, what they're expecting rent to be, at least this would be before the contract is signed, and the tenant would know ahead of time, do I want to sign this contract with this amount of rate, this rate that the landlord is dictating?
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for your
I
question.
can follow up with you offline if need
Yeah.
be. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions, members? If not, let's move on. Thank you very much to the testifiers. Let's move on to Senate Bill 2721, relating to ocean recreation. This measure makes it a petty misdemeanor to violate any provision of Chapter 200, Hawaii Revised Statutes, or rule adopted by the Department of Land and Natural Resources relating to reckless or unauthorized operation of a vessel, unauthorized mooring of a vessel, unauthorized commercial activity, unauthorized camping within state small boat harbors or boating facilities, animal abandonment within state small boat harbors or boating facilities, or creation of animal colonies within state small boat harbors or boating facilities. And the description continues on. Let's go to our first testifier, which is the Attorney General, Melissa Goldman, on Zoom. Oh, you're here in person. Boy, we're all over the place. Sorry about that. Tricia.
No, our apologies. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Deputy Attorney General Tricia Nakamatsu, appearing on behalf of the Department of the Attorney General. We didn't have any position on the intent of the bill. However, we did have some comments that we felt would make it, would better effectuate the intent. The first is with regards to geographical restriction section on the bottom of page 3 through top of line page 4. We'd suggested some rephrasing just to make the language a little bit more consistent with typical criminal statute type language, referring to probations and those probation sections in the penal code. We also suggested removing the phrase "for a period of no more than 12 months," only because it's not the period itself that would be an issue, but having that language in there could be slightly confusing, as the probation sections that we note, 706, 623 in particular, already indicate that probation for a petty misdemeanor is always going to be 6 months, barring a few exceptions which have to be found specifically by the court. However, it can be up to 1 year for a petty misdemeanor if the court finds good cause. And those periods are already in 706, 623. So we would prefer that those periods just remain unconflicted in any way. The next section is water pollution. On page 5, lines 1 through 10, we suggest that that subsection be deleted. In a similar section earlier in section 2 of the bill, this is section 3, but in section 2 of the bill, similar language was deleted, I believe, because the water pollution enforcement is already handled by the Department of Health. So in keeping with what was done in section 2, we think it should be deleted from section 3 as well. And finally, with regards to page 4, line 12, a phrase subtitle 8 of title 12 was replaced with the words "this chapter." This chapter being chapter 200, which is the ocean recreation and coastal areas. We just feel that that was inadvertently taking away enforcement authority over chapters 200A and 200D. So we suggest that you list all of those chapters. It is more easily readable by most people who are familiar with chapter terms, chapter numbers, as opposed to title or subtitle numbers, and 2 conforming amendments to reflect the same. Available for questions, if any.
Thank you. I appreciate the thoroughness of your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have testimony from the Office of the Public Defender.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Haley Chang. I'm the First Deputy at the Office of the Public Defender. We are opposing the current bill, and in addition to our written testimony, I would just like to highlight some of the following. Number one, we are always concerned whenever there's criminal penalties that will be imposed on prospective commercial entities. It creates some confusion, especially when we're talking about an individual who may be operating a vessel or a craft on behalf of a commercial agency. So we are concerned about that potential lack of clarification. Additionally, we believe the administrative fines that are already outlined in the chapter are punitive enough. And furthermore, some of the language clearly seems to be targeting and criminalizing offenses related to our houseless population. For example, on page 2, at the bottom, and going on to the next page, it discusses unauthorized camping, animal abandonment, and small or animal colonies. And in our opinion, those offenses and that behavior is directly targeted towards our houseless community. We also have concerns about the constitutionality of camping offenses, which has previously been deemed unconstitutional. So we would submit on those arguments, and I will be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from the Department of Land and Natural Resources.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. Megan Statz, I'm the Assistant Administrator for the Division of Boating and Ocean Recreation. We stand on our written testimony in full support of this measure. The need for this is just that we're trying to help DoCare to basically address the enforcement actions that we have within our small boat harbors and our ocean waters. So we've been working in support with the AG's office, and we are supportive with their amendments as well. I'll be here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have testimony with comments from the Maui Chamber of Commerce. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Yes.
Angela Melody Young, on behalf of ROAR, Rescue of Animal Rights, with a proposal and in opposition. So page 3, line 1, 2, 3, 4. Animal abandonment within state small harbors or boating facilities, or creation of animal colonies within state small boat harbors or boating facilities shall be guilty of a petty misdemeanor. So I want to rationalize the opposition of this by pointing out Senate Bill 2114 relating to Department of Education school systems and the feeding of feral cats.
On this bill?
Yes. I want to focus on explaining this bill with the research that I provided for the other bill. It's relatable because it's also on state jurisdiction, right? The other bill was for school property. This one's for state boat, harbor, and facilities. And it has to do with cat colonies. So it's counterproductive for animal management, which are mutual goals of the community and the government, right? To provide care, to administer care to feral cat colonies if the people can't get to the cats, if the cat community can't get to the cat colonies, okay? So animal colonies naturally exist. If DLNR or DOA does not create management strategies to provide for the cat colonies to mitigate living creatures on government property, and it does not provide sanctuary space to foster the
Summarize,
animals,
please.
and the DLNR has statutory parameters to operate sanctuaries. And if they're not providing within their statutory authority to manage colonies, then the cat community has to provide on-state jurisdiction nutrition and administer care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? No. Thanks very much. Thanks to the testifiers. We're going to move on to the next measure, Senate Bill 2308, relating to speeding. This measure authorizes additional fines and penalties for convictions of speeding in a school zone. First up, we have Department of Transportation.
Afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Melissa Miranda Johnson for the Department of Transportation. We're going to stand on our testimony and support, and briefly, we believe that increasing fines will help deter drivers from engaging in risky driving behaviors.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from the Office of the Public Defender.
Good afternoon again, Haley Chang on behalf of the Office of the Public Defender. And we are in opposition to the increase of these fines, and mainly because we in no way are advocating for speeding in school zones. But I think the problem is, and I know this committee is aware of, the numerous drivers in our state who cannot get their license because of license stoppers. And most of those people are due to outstanding fines and fees. A fine of $250 for a first offense, which in a school zone could be exceeding the speed limit by 4 or 5 miles an hour. Oftentimes, school zones are known to have very reduced speed, which we understand the safety considerations. But increasing fines to $250 and upwards of $1,000 for a third offense, in addition to the revocation of a license, we believe is excessive and only further contributes to the problem of individuals not being able to clear fines and fees in order to maintain their licenses. So for those reasons, we oppose. And I will be available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from the Oahu Metropolitan Planning Organization and 2 individuals. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 2735? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thanks very much to the testifiers. Senate Bill 2834 relating to the Landlord-Tenant Code. This amends the Residential Landlord-Tenant Code to provide, did I skip one? Oh, driver's license. Yeah, thank you. Senate Bill 2735 relating to driver licensing. This measure requires driver's license examination to test the applicant's knowledge of dangers that larger motor vehicles present to pedestrians and bicyclists. It requires persons who commit the offense of excessively speeding or driving while intoxicated to retake and pass the driver's license examination for each offense. First up, we have Department of Transportation.
Good afternoon, Chair. Melissa Miranda Johnson from the Department of Transportation. We'll stand on our testimony in support. Briefly, we believe that educating drivers about the potential hazards large vehicles present can help with pedestrian and bicyclist safety. We're available for any questions.
Thank you. Next, we have Office of the Public Defender.
And good afternoon again, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Haley Chang again on behalf of the Office of the Public Defender. And we are strongly opposing this bill for the following reasons. As to the excessive speeding, again, we do not support or condone excessive speeding in any way, but as our written testimony highlights, the penalties that are in existence for excessive speeding are quite severe. I can speak from personal experience representing thousands of individuals through the years charged with this offense. It does have some of the most debilitating impacts on their lives for the following reasons. It requires a mandatory license suspension. It also already requires that they take and complete a driver improvement class as part of their proof of compliance for this offense. And additionally, it imposes something called SR 22 on their insurance, which is a very significant insurance requirement that can increase their insurance rates by thousands of dollars. So we do not believe that for a first offense excessive, especially, that there is a need to retake the licensing class. As to the habitual, we'll stand on support of our written testimony, which already requires that your license is revoked, which means that in order for somebody convicted of habitual DUI, that they are already required to retake their driver test in order to get back their license. So we believe that is unnecessary, and I will be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from the Oahu Metropolitan Planning Organization and 2 individuals in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? Nope, seeing none. Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to Senate Bill 2834 relating to the Landlord-Tenant Code. This measure amends the Residential Landlord-Tenant Code to provide for a process to dispose the tenant's personal property and surrender the dwelling unit to a landlord when there is a death of a tenant. First up, we have testimony from Hawaii Realtors.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Again, Lindsay Garcia from Hawaii Realtors. We stand in support of this bill, and we appreciate the amendments that were made in the previous committee, which allows a family member now to be able to come forward to assist after the death of a tenant. And we would also respectfully request an implementation date of November 1st, 2024, should we need to update our standard forms. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all that we have heard. Who wants to testify on this? Is there anyone else here that wishes to testify on Senate Bill 2834? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, thank you very much to the testifiers. We'll move on. Senate Bill 3312 relating to state gesture. This measure adopts, establishes, and designates the shaka as the official gesture of the state. Authorizes the State Foundation on Culture and the Arts to develop a public work of art relating to the shaka and its history to be displayed in a prominent location in the state. First up, we have testimony from Ryan Ozawa in support, and Steve Su in support.
I'm here. Aloha, Chairman Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing this testimony today. I am a Kamiki resident, and I'm also the producer-writer of a film entitled Shaka, A Story of Aloha. It's been a 5-year odyssey to root out the story of the shaka. So I did submit written testimony. I stand by it strongly, including I mentioned that I do believe that the amendment for the State Foundation on Culture and the Arts to develop a public work of art related to the shaka is a worthy activity to engage in. So I will remain available for questions. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Su. We also received testimony from 6 individuals in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 3312? If not, questions, members? Nope, seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Su and other testifiers. We're going to move on to the final measure on our agenda, Senate Bill 2657, relating to Makahiki Commemoration Day. This measure designates one day of each year as Makahiki Commemoration Day. First up, we have testimony from the Hawaii Alliance for Progressive Action in support, and 4 individuals in support, and also we have testimony from Dr. Kaliko Baker on Zoom. Please proceed.
Aloha, Kekomike. Thank you for hearing me. My name is Dr. Kaliko Baker, and I'm in support of this measure. I stand on my testimony submitted earlier today, and I wanted to address Representative Tam's comments on his notes when he passed the measure over to you, your committee, and support what he wrote in there about the commemoration day being held on the lunar nights of Hua of the month Ikuwa, so attending to the traditional Hawaiian lunar calendar. I'll be available for comment or questions or whatever you need. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? I have one question. Dr. Baker, if I could ask you, is there a proper way to, I've seen 2 different spellings of the name of the month of Ikua. One of them has was it W? Yeah, I-K-U-W-A. Is including the W before the A proper, or is it better not to have the W?
It can be assumed because of the U and the A come together, they sort of automatically make a W
A W,
sound.
okay.
So what the Puku'i Albert Dictionary has done is eliminated the W because it's always a wa sound and never like that V sound.
Yes.
Sometimes we hear in Hawaiian. So yeah, probably my professional opinion would be to leave it out.
Okay, so let me just run this by you. I'm thinking of including and recommending to the committee that we say designating, this is the quote that we put in the bill, designating Makahiki Commemoration Day as one of the Kapu Hua days of Mohalu Hua or Akua of the lunar month of Ikua. The calendar date can be projected yearly using various technologies that track celestial phenomena, then determined and publicized the equivalent day of the Gregorian calendar on which the state should commemorate the Makahiki season. Does that seem appropriate?
Yes, yes, that seems very good.
Okay, great. Well, your testimony played a critical role in helping us come up with this language, so thank you very much for your testimony.
Mahalo nui. Mahalo nui.
Mahalo. Any other questions? Any other questions? Nope. Okay, thank you very much. There being no further questions on this, we're going to go back up to the top of the agenda for decision-making. Okay, first up, Senate Bill 2066, SD2 HD1. My recommendation is to adopt HHFDC's amendments and also make it clear, and we also need to make technical amendments as well. Okay, so the recommendation is HHFDC's amendments and technical amendments. Members, questions or concerns? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2066 SD2 HD2, Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Evelyn?
Aye.
Representative Gannon excused. Representative Holt excused. Representative Ichiyama?
Aye.
Representative Iligan excused. Representative Kong?
Aye.
Representative Miyake?
Aye.
Representative Souza?
Aye.
Chair, your recommendations approved.
Thank you. Senate Bill 3025 HD1 relating to hemp. I recommend we move this out as is. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 3025 HD1, passing as is. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Noting the excused absences of Representatives Ganadin, Holt, and Iligan. Any members voting with reservations or no? Seeing none, your recommendation is approved.
Thank you. Senate Bill 3154 SD1 HD1 relating to regulation of archaeological activities. I recommend we move this out as is. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 3154 SD1 HD1, passing as is. Noting the excused absences of Representatives Ganadin, Holt, and Iligan. Any members voting with reservations or no? Seeing none, your recommendations adopted.
Thank you. Senate Bill 2908 SD1 HD1 relating to emergency management. I recommend we move this out, adopting the Realtors amendments, except for, I don't think we need the words "or other prohibitions," because that, we are to, just earlier in that sentence, we talk about the prohibition being identified and continued. So we will adopt all the other recommended amendments from the Realtors except for those, except for the quote "or other prohibitions," and then make technical amendments as well. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2908 SD1 HD2. Any members with reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendations adopted.
Thank you. Senate Bill 2721 SD2 HD1. I'd like to recommend that we adopt the Attorney General's amendments in their testimony, and that we also include definitions for numerous terms that are used in this section which are not defined. And we can draw the definitions from other statutes, but the terms that are not defined in here, which we will define, are the word operate, the word parasailing, thrillcraft, vessel, water sledding, and waters of the state. So those are terms that we will define, and we'll make some technical amendments as well. 2721. Those are my recommendations. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2721 SD2 HD2. Any reservations or noes? Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. Next bill, Senate Bill 2308 SD1 HD1. I recommend we move this out with technical amendments. And also, I want to clarify the language in here so that it's clearer. right now, it's not really well-crafted. So the new penalty structure was confusing to me. So if a person commits a fourth violation that does not occur within 18 months of a first offense, then that person would not fall within any of the categories established. So I want to make it clear. So on page 1, line 5 to 14, I'll amend the language as follows. Where the violation involves speeding in a school zone, shall be charged a surcharge of $25 to be deposited into the Safe Routes to School Program Special Fund and may be subject to the following. For the first violation or any violation not preceded within 18 months of a violation under this paragraph, an additional fine of $250. For the second violation that occurs within 18 months of a prior violation under this paragraph, an additional fine of $500. And for the third or subsequent violation that occurs within 18 months of a prior violation, etc. So that's would make it clear to my simple mind. So we'll make those changes and make technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. Those are my recommendations for 2308. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2308 SD1 HD2. Any reservations or noes? Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. On the next bill, 2735, relating, Senate Bill 2735, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, relating to driver licenses. I would like to make some technical amendments, and also on page 9, lines 16 to 19, the reference is incorrect. It says the reference to subsection C should be just changed to this section. And then just make technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. Those are my recommendations. Questions or concerns, members? Representative Kong.
Sure. Maybe you can answer, but what is larger vehicles concerned? It says larger vehicles and trucks. So trucks I can understand, but what is larger vehicles?
I don't know. It's where I've seen some very large cars.
Yes.
That can cause significant challenge for bicyclists.
Right.
So that I would count that as a larger vehicle, but that's just my simple mind.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Not that I can answer them, but you can ask. Okay. If no further questions, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2735 SD1 HD2, noting the presence of Representative Ilagan. Any members with reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Senate Bill 2834, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, relating to the Landlord-Tenant Code. On this, I would like to, again, there's some revisions that need to be made. There's page 3, line 21 to page 4, line 3. The first half of the sentence is repetitive of the previous sentence, so I just want to straighten that out. So make that revision and also put into the Standing Committee report the Realtor's request of implementation date of November 1st, 2024. Those are my recommendations. Any questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2834 SD1 HD2. Any reservations or noes? Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. Next measure, Senate Bill 3312, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, relating to state gesture. I'd like to recommend we move this out with amendments, and we would include in here the definition of shaka as we included in House Bill 2736 HD1, which reads, the shaka generally consists of extending the thumb and smallest finger while holding the 3 middle fingers curled and gesturing in salutation while presenting the front or back of the hand. The wrist may be rotated back and forth for emphasis. So that's my recommendation to include in this measure as an amendment. Questions or concerns, members?
Could you give us a visual display just so we got it? Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 3312 SD1 HD2. Any reservations or noes? Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. Last bill, Senate Bill 2657, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, relating to Makahiki Commemoration Day. On this measure, I'd like to pass out the amendment that I cleared with Dr. Baker On page 1, line 9, insert the following language, quote, designating Makahiki Commemoration Day as one of the Kapu Hua days of Mohalu Hua or Akua of the lunar month of Ikua. The calendar date can be projected yearly using various technologies that track celestial phenomena, then determined and publicize the equivalent day of the Gregorian calendar on which the state should commemorate the Makahiki season. So I'd like to add that and make technical amendments as needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2657 SD1 HD2. Any reservations or noes? Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. There being no further business before this committee today, we are adjourned.